Odin flinched as the droplets spattered against his scaly hide, his primal fear overriding years of training and hardened instinct. The legendary Tholian Hitman, terror of 1,000 systems, now found himself cowering before a substance most humans would consider harmless: water. But for Odin, each bead of liquid conjured flashbacks of searing lungs and flailing limbs, sensations he had fought to bury since that fateful day on the swamp planet Krolak 4. "No," Odin growled, his voice low and gravelly. "I won't do it, not on Earth." Zygax's holographic form shimmered with barely contained rage. The grizzled Tholian crime boss had little patience for Odin's phobias, seeing them as a weakness unbefitting of his syndicate's top enforcer. "This contract is non-negotiable," Zygax snarled. "The target is a high-ranking UEG official. His elimination will send shockwaves through the galactic power structure. Our clients are paying a fortune." Odin remained unmoved, his obsidian eyes glinting in the dim light of his ship's cabin. He had faced down armies and toppled governments, but the mere thought of setting foot on a planet covered in oceans filled him with an all-consuming dread. Realizing that force would not sway the stubborn Hitman, Zygax changed tactics. With a smirk, he summoned the holographic image of a man named Harry Morris, a human grifter indebted to the Syndicate. "Meet your new partner," Zygax said. "He'll be your guide on Earth. Stick to the deserts, avoid the coasts. You'll be fine." Odin studied the projection, taking in Harry's gaunt features and shifty eyes. He didn't trust the human, but the lure of a challenge and a hefty payday proved too strong to resist. As Odin and Harry descended upon Earth, the Hitman's unease grew with each passing moment. The blue planet loomed before them, a swirling mass of clouds and vast oceans that set Odin's scales on edge. Harry, sensing his partner's discomfort, did his best to reassure him. "Don't worry, big guy," Harry said, his voice dripping with false confidence. "The warehouse is in the middle of the desert, not a drop of water in sight." Odin grunted in response, his obsidian eyes fixed on the screen as their ship pierced the atmosphere. The landscape below transformed from lush green to barren brown, the sprawling cities giving way to empty expanses of sand and rock. As they touched down outside the abandoned warehouse, Odin scanned the area with his high-tech visor, searching for any signs of life. The building appeared deserted, its rusted metal walls baking under the relentless sun. "Zoran's supposed to be hiding out here?" Odin asked, his gravelly voice tinged with suspicion. Harry nodded, wiping the sweat from his brow. "That's what my sources say. Let's get in, get the job done, and get out." The unlikely pair approached the warehouse, Odin's massive frame dwarfing his human companion. With a swift kick, the Hitman sent the door flying off its hinges, revealing the cavernous interior. But instead of Zoran, they found only a single sheet of paper pinned to the far wall. Odin strode forward, his claws clicking against the concrete floor. He snatched the note, his eyes narrowing as he read the taunting message. "Zoran knows I'm here," Odin growled, crumpling the paper in his fist. "He's challenging me to find him." Harry shifted nervously, his mind racing. This wasn't part of the plan. If Zoran was aware of Odin's presence, then the arms dealer might also know about the Hitman's crippling fear of water. Odin, however, seemed undeterred. With a few taps on his wrist-mounted computer, he activated his advanced tracking technology. A holographic map of the city sprang to life, a pulsing red dot indicating Zoran's location. "There," Odin said, his voice filled with unbreakable spirit. "A mansion in Beverly Hills." Harry's heart sank as he studied the map. The luxurious estate was surrounded by lush gardens and elaborate water features, a far cry from the arid safety of the desert. "Odin, maybe we should rethink this," Harry suggested, his palms slick with sweat. "If Zoran knows you're coming, it could be a trap." But Odin was already on the move, his long strides carrying him back to the ship. Harry had no choice but to follow, his mounting dread tempered only by the knowledge that he had no other options. As they flew low over the city, the glittering pools and verdant lawns of Beverly Hills came into view. Odin's grip on the controls tightened, his knuckles turning pale beneath his scaly hide. They landed on the mansion's roof, the ship's cloaking device rendering them invisible to any prying eyes. Odin leaped from the hatch, his high-tech gadgets making short work of the building's security systems. Harry followed, his heart pounding as they crept through the opulent halls. The sound of rushing water echoed from every direction, a constant reminder of Odin's deepest fears. At last, they cornered Zoran in his study, the arms dealer lounging behind a massive mahogany desk. But instead of fear, Zoran's face held only a smug grin. "I've been expecting you, Odin," Zoran said, his voice dripping with malice. "You see, I know all about your little phobia. And your boss, Zygax? He's been working with me to lure you into a trap." Odin's eyes widened, a mix of rage and terror coursing through his veins. Zoran's hand moved to a hidden button beneath his desk, and suddenly, the floor began to retract. Harry, realizing what was about to happen, lunged forward and grabbed Odin by the arm. He yanked the hitman back just as the floor disappeared, revealing a deep, indoor pool beneath their feet. Odin froze, his mind overwhelmed by the sight of so much water. Harry, thinking quickly, dragged the paralyzed hitman back to safety, narrowly escaping the trap. In the chaos, Zoran managed to flee, his laughter echoing through the mansion as he disappeared down a hidden passageway. Odin and Harry were left to catch their breath, the hitman's chest heaving as he fought to control his terror. Harry, realizing that he could no longer maintain his deception, turned to face Odin. "Listen, big guy," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. "I haven't been entirely honest with you. Zygax hired me to trick you into coming to Earth. He knew about your phobia and wanted to use it against you." Odin's eyes flashed with anger, his claws clenching into fists. But as he looked at Harry, he saw genuine remorse etched across the human's face. "I'm sorry, Odin," Harry continued, "but I want to help you now. We can beat Zoran and Zygax at their own game. We just have to work together." Odin hesitated, his instincts warring with his desire for revenge. Finally, he nodded, his voice low and dangerous. "Fine," he growled, "but don't think for a second that this makes us friends. We're partners, nothing more." Harry nodded, relief flooding through him. "Understood. Now let's figure out our next move." As they made their way back to the ship, Odin and Harry began to plan. They would take on smaller jobs, throwing their enemies off their trail while they devised a strategy to confront Zoran and Zygax once and for all. The stage was set for an unlikely alliance, the alien hitman and the human con artist embarking on a series of adventures across Earth. Each mission would bring them closer to their ultimate goal, testing their skills and forcing them to confront their deepest fears. But for now, they had work to do. With unyielding commitment, Odin and Harry set course for their next target, the vast expanse of the galaxy stretching out before them. The neon lights of Las Vegas blurred past as Odin and Harry sped through the city in their sleek, unmarked vehicle. Their latest target, Jack Reeves, was a high-stakes gambler with ties to Zygax's syndicate. Harry's fingers flew across a holographic display, pulling up information on their mark. "Reeves frequents the Golden Mirage Casino," Harry said, his eyes scanning the data. "But we can't risk a public hit. I've got a plan." Odin grunted, his obsidian eyes fixed on the road. "Let's hear it." Harry outlined his scheme. Pose as a high roller, challenge Reeves to a private game, and lure him to a secluded location. Odin would then eliminate the target without witnesses. The plan unfolded smoothly at first. Harry, dressed in an expensive suit and oozing false confidence, caught Reeves's attention at the baccarat table. Within an hour, he had enticed the gambler to a high-stakes game at a nearby mansion. As they approached the estate, Odin's scales bristled with unease. The hitman's instincts, honed over years of dangerous missions, screamed that something was off. His fears were confirmed as they stepped inside. The mansion's interior was dominated by a massive indoor pool, complete with cascading waterfalls and a winding lazy river. Odin froze, his heart pounding as he took in the vast expanse of water. Harry, noticing his partner's distress, pulled him aside. "Change of plans," he whispered urgently. "Use your tech to create a distraction. I'll get Reeves away from the water." Odin nodded stiffly, his claws fumbling with the controls on his wrist computer. A swarm of tiny drones emerged from hidden compartments in his armor, zipping towards the pool area. Within seconds, the air above the water erupted in a dazzling light show, drawing gasps of wonder from Reeves and his entourage. Seizing the opportunity, Harry smoothly guided Reeves away from the commotion and into a private study. Odin slipped in behind them, his weapon at the ready. But as the hitman took aim, Reeves spun around, a cruel smile twisting his features. "I know all about you, Odin," he sneered, "and your little problem." Before either Odin or Harry could react, Reeves slammed his hand down on a hidden panel. A mechanical whine filled the air as the hidden pipes burst to life, gushing water into the room at an alarming rate. Odin's breath caught in his throat, his limbs locking up as the water level rose rapidly. Harry shouted encouragement, but his words were lost in the roar of rushing water and the pounding of Odin's own pulse in his ears. With the water now lapping at their waists, Odin forced himself to focus. He raised his weapon, fighting against the paralyzing fear that threatened to overwhelm him. With a deep breath, he squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, and Reeves crumpled to the floor. Harry wasted no time, grabbing Odin's arm and dragging him towards the exit. They burst out of the mansion, soaked and gasping, and raced to their waiting vehicle. As they sped away from the scene, Harry turned to Odin, his eyes gleaming with a mix of admiration and calculation. "You did it, big guy. You faced your fear head on." Odin grunted, still shaken from the ordeal. "Don't get sentimental on me, human." "I'm not," Harry replied, a sly grin spreading across his face. "I'm thinking we can use this. Your phobia doesn't have to be a weakness. It can be a weapon." The hitman's obsidian eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" Harry leaned forward, his voice low and intense. "Our next target is Marcus Klein. He's got connections to Zygax, and he's obsessed with swimming. There's this exclusive water park he visits." As Harry outlined his audacious plan, Odin felt a mix of dread and grit settle in his gut. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in his life, he wasn't facing his fears alone. Alone. As Harry's words sank in, Odin felt a grudging respect for his human partner's cunning. Their plans, however, were about to be violently derailed. The safe house windows exploded inward, showering the room with glass. Odin's instincts kicked in as he tackled Harry to the ground, shielding him from the debris. Gunfire erupted, bullets tearing through walls and furniture. "Zygax," Odin growled, his obsidian eyes narrowing. He activated his armor's defensive systems, a shimmering energy shield materializing around them. Harry scrambled to his feet, his face pale. "How did he find us?" "No time," Odin snapped, unholstering his plasma rifle. "Move!" They burst out the back door, sprinting down narrow alleyways as Zygax's mercenaries gave chase. The quaint seaside town transformed into a war zone, civilians screaming and scattering as energy blasts and bullets ricocheted off buildings. Rain began to fall, quickly intensifying into a downpour. Thunder cracked overhead as they emerged onto the rain-slicked boardwalk. Odin's scales bristled at the sight of the churning ocean, but there was no time for fear. "The lighthouse!" Harry shouted over the storm, pointing to a weathered structure looming in the distance. "We can hold out there." They raced across the beach, sand flying beneath their feet. Odin fired behind them, his advanced weaponry keeping their pursuers at bay. They reached the lighthouse just as a massive wave crashed against its base, spraying them with salty mist. Odin hesitated at the entrance, his breath coming in short gasps. Harry grabbed his arm, pulling him inside. "Come on, big guy. We don't have a choice." They barricaded the door and climbed the winding stairs, emerging onto the observation deck. The storm raged around them, wind and rain lashing at the windows. Far below, they could see Zygax's forces surrounding the lighthouse. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the room, revealing Zygax's sneering face. "Did you really think you could hide from me, Odin?" Odin snarled, his claws clenching into fists. "How did you find us?" Zygax's grin widened. "You're not as clever as you think. I've had eyes on you this whole time." He gestured, and a familiar face appeared beside him. Jack Reeves, very much alive. Harry's eyes widened in shock. "But we killed you!" "A convincing performance, wasn't it?" Reeves smirked. Zygax's tech can fake a lot of things, including death. Zygax leaned forward, his voice cold. Enough games. You have two choices, Odin. Complete the original contract, or watch your human pet die before I put you down myself. Odin's mind raced, weighing his options. The target was on an offshore oil rig, surrounded by miles of open water. It was a nightmare scenario for the aquaphobic Hitman. But as he glanced at Harry, he knew he had no choice. Fine, Odin growled. But Harry stays out of it. This is between you and me, Zygax. The crime lord nodded, a cruel smile playing across his lips. Agreed. You have 1 hour to reach the rig. Fail, and you both die. The projection winked out, leaving Odin and Harry alone with the howling wind and pounding waves. Harry turned to his partner, his face grim. You don't have to do this, he said. We can find another way. Odin shook his head, his voice low and determined. No, it's time I face this fear head on. He activated his suit's aquatic mode, sleek fins emerging from his armor. Harry nodded, pulling out a data pad. The rig is 3 miles offshore. In this storm, it's going to be hell getting there. Odin moved to the lighthouse balcony, staring out at the roiling sea. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, to find safety on dry land. But he pushed the fear down, focusing on the task ahead. Guide me through it, he said, his voice barely audible over the storm. I'll need your eyes and ears. With a deep breath, Odin stepped off the balcony, plunging into the turbulent waters below. As he began his treacherous journey to the oil rig, he could hear Harry's voice in his comm link, a lifeline in the chaos of the storm. The mission had taken an unexpected turn, but Odin was determined to see it through, no matter the consequences. The storm howled as Odin plunged into the churning sea. Icy water enveloped him, his armor's systems straining against the pressure. Every instinct screamed at him to surface, to flee the suffocating depths. But Harry's voice crackled in his ear, a lifeline amid the chaos. Steady, big guy. You're doing great. The rig's 3 degrees to your left, about half a mile out. Odin forced himself to focus on Harry's words, pushing through the paralyzing fear. He activated his suit's propulsion system, surging forward through the roiling waves. Suddenly, the water around him erupted in a hail of plasma bolts. Zygax's mercenaries had caught up, their sleek attack boats cutting through the storm. Odin's claws danced across his wrist computer, erecting a shimmering force field. The energy barrier deflected the incoming fire, but each impact sent tremors through Odin's body. They're on our 6, Harry shouted. You need to dive deeper. Odin's breath caught in his throat at the thought, but he steeled himself and plunged downward. The pressure increased, his suit creaking ominously. Through the murky depths, he caught sight of the oil rig's massive support structures looming ahead. With a final burst of speed, Odin broke the surface beside the rig. He latched onto a metal ladder, hauling himself out of the water. His legs trembled as he climbed, adrenaline and fear coursing through his veins. Harry's voice guided him through the rig's maze-like structure. They moved silently, dodging patrols and security cameras. As they approached the central control room, raised voices caught their attention. The bioweapons are primed and ready, Mr. Cross, a gruff voice said. We await your command. Odin and Harry exchanged glances. This was bigger than they'd realized. They crept closer, peering through a gap in the doorway. A tall, imposing man with steel-gray hair stood before a bank of monitors. Damien Cross, their target. He turned, revealing a face etched with cruel lines. Excellent, Cross said, his voice cold and precise. Once we unleash these weapons, the world's governments will be too busy containing the chaos to stop us. Zygax's alien tech, combined with my influence, will reshape the global order. Odin's claws clenched, rage building within him. He prepared to strike, but Harry held him back, gesturing toward a computer terminal. They needed proof. As Cross issued orders to his security team, Harry slipped into the room. His fingers flew across the keyboard, downloading files and schematics. Odin stood guard, every sense on high alert. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the rig. Cross whirled around, his eyes narrowing as he spotted the intruders. Kill them! He roared. Chaos erupted. Odin launched himself at the security forces, his enhanced strength and speed giving him the edge. He ducked and weaved through a hail of gunfire, his own weapons blazing. Bodies fell around him as he carved a path through the room. Harry snatched the data drive and bolted for the exit. "I got it! Let's move!" They raced through the corridors, alarms shrieking and bullets ricocheting off metal walls. As they reached the outer platform, a deafening explosion rocked the rig. Warning klaxons blared as water began pouring in through ruptured pipes. "Self-destruct sequence activated," an automated voice announced. "All personnel evacuate immediately." Odin froze, his eyes wide as he watched the rising water. Panic clawed at his throat, threatening to overwhelm him. Harry grabbed his arm, shouting over the din. "Odin, we have to jump!" But the alien hitman couldn't move, his limbs locked up, terror paralyzing him as thoroughly as any weapon. Harry cursed, then did something unexpected. He stepped in front of Odin, gripping the alien's shoulders. "Look at me," Harry yelled. "You faced this fear before. You can do it again. Trust me." Their eyes met, and for a moment the chaos around them faded away. Odin saw the perseverance in Harry's gaze, the unwavering belief. He took a shuddering breath and nodded. Together they leapt from the platform just as another explosion tore through the rig. They plummeted toward the churning waves below, the heat of the fireball singeing their backs. They hit the water hard, the impact knocking the breath from their lungs. Odin's systems kicked in, propelling them toward a waiting extraction craft. As they clambered aboard, the oil rig collapsed behind them in a massive ball of fire and twisted metal. But their reprieve was short-lived. A massive shadow fell over them as Zygax's ship decloaked overhead. Before they could react, a searing beam of energy lanced down from the alien vessel. Odin's body moved on instinct. He threw himself in front of Harry, his armor absorbing the brunt of the blast. Pain exploded through every nerve as the alien hitman crumpled to the deck. The last thing Odin saw before unconsciousness claimed him was Harry's face, twisted in anguish and purpose. Then darkness swallowed him whole. When Harry regained consciousness, the familiar hum of an alien engine filled his ears. He blinked, disoriented, and found himself in a cramped cell. The walls thrummed with energy, and beyond a shimmering force field, he glimpsed the vast expanse of space. Panic gripped him as he remembered Odin's sacrifice. He stumbled to his feet, pressing against the barrier. "Odin!" he shouted. "Where is he?" A passing guard sneered at him. "Your alien friend's barely alive in the medbay. Not that it matters. We're headed for Tholia, human, and trust me, you don't want to know what awaits you there." As the guard's footsteps faded, Harry sank to the floor. His mind raced, analyzing their dire situation. He knew their only hope lay in contacting Odin's shadowy network of contacts, but trapped in an alien prison cell hurtling through space, that seemed like an impossible task. Yet as he clenched his fists, purpose hardened in Harry's eyes. He'd come too far, survived too much to give up now. Somehow, he would find a way to save Odin and himself. The real challenge had only just begun. Harry's mind raced, searching for any advantage in their seemingly hopeless situation. He patted down his pockets, expecting to find nothing, when his fingers brushed against something small and metallic. His eyes widened as he pulled out a compact communicator, cleverly disguised as a simple data chip. "Thank you, Odin," he whispered, recalling how the alien had slipped it to him just before they jumped from the oil rig. With trembling fingers, Harry activated the device. A holographic display flickered to life, showing an encrypted directory of contacts. He scrolled through the list, recognizing some of the galaxy's most notorious mercenaries and information brokers. One name stood out: Yarala. Harry initiated the call, praying it would connect. After what felt like an eternity, a gravelly voice answered. "Who is this? How did you get this frequency?" "My name is Harry. I'm with Odin. We need your help." There was a long pause. "Prove it." Harry's mind raced. "Odin told me about the job on Centauri Prime. The one where you saved his life and he gave you that scar on your left arm." Another pause, then a low chuckle. Well, the old lizard finally found someone worth trusting. "What's the situation?" Harry quickly explained their dire circumstances. As he spoke, he could hear muffled sounds of movement and barked orders on Yarala's end. "We're already en route," Yarala said when he finished. "But you need to buy us time. Create a distraction, something big enough to throw the ship into chaos." "I'll figure something out," Harry promised. He ended the call and pocketed the communicator. Taking a deep breath, he approached the force field and called out to the nearest guard. "Hey, I need to speak with whoever's in charge. I have information about a planned breakout." The guard sneered but radioed his superior. Minutes later, a burly alien with mottled green skin approached. "This better be good, human," he growled. Harry leaned in close, lowering his voice. "There's a Sorvani shapeshifter 2 cells down. He's gathering support for a mass riot." The guard's eyes widened. Sorvani were notorious for their ability to cause chaos in even the most secure prisons. He hurried away, barking orders into his communicator. Harry allowed himself a small smile. There was no Sorvani, of course, but the seed of paranoia had been planted. Now he just had to fan the flames. He turned to the prisoner in the cell across from him, a towering insectoid with gleaming mandibles. "Psst! They're planning to space all non-humanoids at the next jump. Pass it on!" The alien's compound eyes widened in alarm. It began clicking rapidly to its neighbors, the message spreading like wildfire. Within minutes, the cell block erupted into pandemonium. Prisoners shouted and pounded against their force fields. Guards rushed to and fro, trying to maintain order. Alarms blared as the riot spread to other sections of the ship. In the chaos, Harry spotted his chance. A harried guard passed too close to his cell, and Harry reached through a gap in the force field, snatching the guard's keycard. With a practiced motion, he deactivated the barrier and slipped out. Ducking and weaving through the melee, Harry made his way toward the medical bay. He encountered pockets of resistance, but the confusion worked to his advantage. Most of the guards were too preoccupied with the riot to pay attention to a single escaped human. As he neared the med bay, a familiar voice crackled over the ship's intercom. Zygax, his tone dripping with almost unchecked fury. "Attention all personnel. We have intruders aboard. Lock down all critical systems and prepare for boarding action. Failure to repel these vermin will result in severe consequences." Harry's heart raced. Yarala had arrived. Now he just needed to reach Odin before Zygax's forces could regroup. He rounded a corner and came face to face with 2 heavily armed guards outside the med bay. Without hesitation, Harry charged. He ducked under a plasma blast, closing the distance. His fist connected with the first guard's jaw, sending him sprawling. The second guard raised his weapon, but Harry was faster. He grabbed the guard's arm, twisting it until he dropped the gun. A swift knee to the abdomen doubled the alien over. Harry scooped up the fallen weapon and burst through the medbay doors. His eyes darted around the room, finally landing on a stasis pod in the corner. Through its frosted surface, he could make out Odin's scaled form. As he rushed to the pod's control panel, a cold voice froze him in his tracks. "I must admit I'm impressed." Harry turned slowly. Zygax stood in the doorway, flanked by a squad of elite guards. The crime lord's cybernetic eye glowed menacingly as he leveled a sleek alien pistol at Harry's head. "You've led me on quite the chase," Zygax continued, his voice eerily calm. "But it ends here. Stand aside and I might consider granting you a quick death." Harry's mind raced, searching for a way out. He glanced at Odin's motionless form, then back at Zygax. His hand inched towards the stasis pod controls. "I don't think so," Harry said, a defiant grin spreading across his face. Before Zygax could react, Harry slammed his palm down on the emergency release. The pod hissed open, and Odin's eyes snapped open, blazing with primal fury. Fury! In a blur of motion, the alien hitman sprang from the pod, his body coiled with lethal intent. Zygax's eyes widened in shock, his finger tightening on the trigger. But Odin was faster. The alien's clawed hand clamped around Zygax's wrist, twisting it with bone-crushing force. The crime lord's weapon clattered to the floor as he howled in pain. Odin's other hand shot out, grabbing Zygax by the throat and lifting him off his feet. The guards raised their weapons, but Harry was already moving. He dove for the fallen pistol, coming up firing. Two of the elite guards dropped before they could react. The others scattered, seeking cover behind medical equipment. Alarms blared throughout the ship as the firefight intensified. Harry ducked behind an overturned gurney, plasma bolts sizzling past his head. He glanced at Odin, who still held Zygax aloft, the crime lord's face turning purple. "Odin!" Harry shouted. "We need to move!" The alien hitman's eyes cleared, focusing on Harry. With a snarl, he hurled Zygax into the remaining guards, sending them sprawling. In that moment of chaos, Odin and Harry sprinted from the medbay. They raced through corridors choked with smoke and fleeing prisoners. Explosions rocked the ship, nearly throwing them off their feet. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a hulking figure in battle armor. "Yorala!" Odin growled, recognition flashing in his eyes. The mercenary nodded, her gravelly voice tinged with amusement. "You look like shit, old friend." "He needs medical attention," Harry interjected, supporting Odin's weight. Yorala's eyes narrowed, assessing the situation. "This way, my team's got a shuttle docked in Hangar 3. They followed Yorala through the bowels of the dying ship, dodging pockets of resistance and collapsing bulkheads. By the time they reached the hangar, Odin was barely conscious, his scales ashen and cold. As they boarded Yorala's sleek assault craft, a final explosion tore through the ship. The hangar doors buckled, exposing the bay to the vacuum of space. Yorala's pilot gunned the engines, rocketing them clear of the disintegrating vessel. Harry watched through the viewscreen as Zygax's ship broke apart, scattering debris across the starfield. He let out a shaky breath, the adrenaline finally ebbing from his system. Turning back to Odin, he saw the alien's eyes flutter closed. "Hold on," Harry whispered, gripping his friend's scaled hand. "Just hold on." The next few days passed in a blur of sterile corridors and hushed conversations. Yorala's team whisked them to a hidden medical facility on the fringes of known space. Harry paced outside the operating theater for hours as a team of alien surgeons worked to save Odin's life. When they finally allowed him to see Odin, Harry's breath caught in his throat. The alien hitman lay motionless in a specialized stasis pod, his normally vibrant scales dull and lifeless. A web of tubes and wires connected him to softly humming medical equipment. Harry pulled up a chair beside the pod, his eyes never leaving Odin's face. As the hours stretched into days, he found himself talking, filling the silence with stories of Earth and human culture. He described sprawling cities and open prairies, recounted tales of human perseverance and ingenuity. "You should see the Grand Canyon," Harry said, his voice hoarse from constant use. "It's this massive gorge carved by a river over millions of years. Makes you feel small, but in a good way, you know." He paused, studying Odin's unchanging expression. "When you wake up, I'll take you there. We'll stand on the edge and watch the sunset paint the rocks 100 different colors." Days turned to weeks, and still Odin slept. Harry barely left his side, eating and sleeping in the small room. Yorala visited periodically, bringing news of her efforts to dismantle Zygax's criminal empire. "Your intel was solid," she told Harry during one such visit. "We've taken down 3 major syndicate operations in the past week alone." Harry nodded absently, his focus remaining on Odin. Yorala's expression softened, a rare occurrence for the battle-hardened mercenary. "He's strong," she said. "If anyone can pull through this, it's him." As she turned to leave, Harry called out, "Yorala, thank you for everything." She paused in the doorway, then gave a curt nod before disappearing down the corridor. It was during one of Harry's recitations of Earth's history that he noticed a change. Odin's clawed hand twitched ever so slightly. Harry leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. Slowly, Odin's eyes opened, focusing on Harry's face. The alien's mouth worked silently for a moment before he managed to croak out a single word. "Water." Harry laughed, tears of relief streaming down his face as he reached for a hydration pack. As he helped Odin drink, the alien's gaze never left his face. "You stayed," Odin said softly, his voice gaining strength. Harry nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Odin's hand found his, gripping it with surprising strength. "Tell me more," the alien hitman said, "about your Earth." And so Harry did, watching as wonder and curiosity bloomed in Odin's eyes. It was the beginning of a new chapter in their unlikely friendship, forged in the crucible of shared danger and unwavering loyalty. But even as Odin regained his strength, shadows gathered on the horizon. Jarla's intelligence network buzzed with alarming reports. Zygax's former lieutenants were regrouping, consolidating their power on a heavily fortified warworld, and their sights were set squarely on Earth. As Harry helped Odin through his grueling physical therapy, he could see the dedication hardening in his friend's eyes. They both knew that their greatest challenge still lay ahead, a final confrontation that would test the limits of their newfound bond. Harry's eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display hovering above Jarla's war table. The swirling blue orb of Epsilon 6 rotated slowly, its watery surface marred by a network of artificial structures. "This is where they're amassing their forces?" he asked, his voice tight with tension. Jarla nodded, her battle-scarred face grim. "Craxus and Narilla have turned the moon into a fortress. Our intel suggests they're preparing for a major offensive." Odin leaned forward, his scaled fingers tracing the outline of a massive underwater hangar. "We need to strike first," he growled. "Cut off the head before they can mobilize." Harry glanced at his partner, concern etching his features. "Odin, are you sure about this? That's a lot of water down there." The alien hitman's eyes flashed with commitment. "I won't let my weakness jeopardize the mission. We end this now." Hours later, their stealth shuttle breached Epsilon 6's atmosphere. Harry felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as they plunged beneath the waves, the vessel's advanced cloaking systems rendering them invisible to the moon's formidable defenses. Odin's breathing quickened as the endless expanse of water enveloped them. Harry placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, feeling the alien's muscles coiled tight beneath his touch. "Remember the plan," Harry murmured. "I'll disable their systems while you lead the assault on the hangars. Jarla's team will handle crowd control." Odin nodded, his eyes fixed on the approaching underwater complex. He double-checked the seals on his modified combat suit, designed to withstand the crushing pressures of Epsilon 6 depths. The shuttle docked with a muffled thud. Jarla's voice crackled over the comm. "We're in. Move fast and hit hard. Good hunting." They surged from the airlock, propulsion units carrying them swiftly through the murky waters. Harry peeled off towards a glowing control node, his fingers flying over his wrist-mounted hacker. Alarms blared as security systems crashed in rapid succession. Odin pushed through his mounting panic, leading the charge towards the massive hangar doors. Syndicate troops poured from airlocks, their hydro armor gleaming in the eerie blue light. Plasma bolts sizzled through the water as the battle was joined. Harry's voice cut through the chaos. "Odin! The main bay is opening!" The alien hitman spun, seeing the colossal doors slowly parting. A swarm of sleek attack submersibles emerged, overflowing with weaponry. Odin's eyes widened as he recognized the lead vessel. "Craxus!" he snarled. Before he could pursue, the water around them began to churn violently. Harry's frantic voice filled the comm channel. "They've activated some kind of weapon. The ocean's starting to boil." Odin watched in horror as vast clouds of superheated steam billowed from massive vents in the ocean floor. The temperature spiked, threatening to overwhelm even their advanced suits. "We need to shut it down," Jarla shouted, her team falling back under the assault. Harry's fingers flew over his hacker, searching desperately for a weakness. "The controls are too well protected. We'd need to get to the core itself to—" "I'll do it," Odin interrupted, his voice cold with drive. "What?" "No," Harry protested. "The heat, the pressure. It's suicide." But Odin was already moving, propelling himself towards the roiling epicenter of the weapon's effects. Harry cursed, providing covering fire as his partner vanished into the seething maelstrom. Long seconds ticked by, punctuated by the sounds of battle. Harry's heart pounded as he waited for any sign of Odin's survival. Suddenly, the churning waters stilled. The oppressive heat began to dissipate. A ragged cheer went up from Jarla's team as the weapon powered down. Harry's relief was short-lived. A massive figure in state-of-the-art hydro armor burst from a concealed airlock, bearing down on him with terrifying speed. "Narilla," he breathed, barely dodging a vicious swipe from her augmented claws. The syndicate lieutenant's voice crackled with malice. You've cost us everything, human. Now you'll pay the price. Harry fought desperately, but Narilla's advanced armor gave her a decisive edge. She batted aside his attacks, her enhanced strength threatening to crush his suit with each blow. Just as Narilla pinned Harry against the complex's outer hull, a familiar roar echoed through the water. Odin, his scales blistered and armor half-melted, slammed into Narilla with the force of a torpedo. The two titans grappled, trading devastating blows. Harry's mind raced, searching for a weakness in Narilla's seemingly impenetrable defenses. His eyes locked onto a small power coupling at the base of her helmet. Odin, he shouted, the neck seal! The alien hitman understood instantly. He fainted low, then surged upward, his claws finding the precise spot Harry had indicated. Narilla's armor sparked and sputtered, its systems failing. With a final, titanic effort, Odin hurled Narilla into a nearby airlock. Harry slammed his palm on the emergency override, sealing the syndicate leader inside. As the sounds of battle faded, Harry turned to his partner. Odin's scales were a mess of angry welts and burns, but his eyes blazed with triumph. We did it, Harry said, his voice filled with relief and admiration. Odin nodded wearily. But our work is far from finished. In the distance, Yaralla's team secured the last pockets of resistance. Kraxus's submersible lay disabled, its occupants captured. The Syndicate's grand offensive had been shattered before it could begin. As Harry helped Odin towards the waiting medical team, his mind raced with possibilities. They had struck a decisive blow against their enemies, but a new chapter was just beginning. With Yaralla's resources and their hard-won experience, they had the chance to forge something greater, a force for justice in a galaxy that sorely needed it. Odin's voice pulled him from his thoughts. When this is over, the alien said softly, I believe I'm ready to see that Grand Canyon of yours. Harry grinned, squeezing his partner's shoulder. First things first, let's get you patched up and make sure these syndicate scumbags face justice. As they boarded Yaralla's command ship, Harry knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. An unlikely duo united by shared trials and an unshakable bond. As the dust settled from their victory on Epsilon the Sixth, Harry and Odin found themselves standing at a crossroads. The defeat of Zygax's remnants had left a power vacuum in the galactic underworld, one that wouldn't remain empty for long. We can't stop here, Odin said, his voice firm as he gazed out the viewport of Yaralla's command ship. There will always be another threat, another syndicate ready to step into the void. Harry nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. Then we build something to stand against them. Not just us, but a real organization. Yaralla, overhearing their conversation, approached with a glint in her eye. I might have some resources to contribute to such an endeavor. In the weeks that followed, their vision took shape. A secret base was established on a remote planetoid, its location known only to a select few. Yaralla's extensive network provided a steady stream of recruits, beings from across the galaxy united by a desire for justice. As their fledgling organization grew, so did the challenges they faced. It was during a routine intelligence briefing that they first heard whispers of the Hydrianx Collective. They're expanding rapidly, Yaralla reported, her holographic display showcasing a vast network of aquatic territories. Led by someone calling themselves Drexel, our sources say they're amassing an armada capable of threatening multiple coastal worlds. Odin's scales bristled at the mention of water-based operations, but his voice remained steady. We need to infiltrate their command structure, gather intel on their plans. Harry studied his partner, concern etched on his face. Odin, are you sure? After everything that happened on Epsilon 6, the alien hitman's eyes met Harry's, filled with drive. I won't let fear dictate our actions. This is too important. Days later, their stealth shuttle approached Drexel's mobile fortress, a massive submersible that dwarfed even the largest capital ships. Using stolen access codes, they slipped past the outer defensive perimeter. As they moved through the behemoth's labyrinthine corridors, Odin's breathing grew ragged. Water sloshed beneath the metal grating at their feet, and the rumble of vast pumps echoed through the walls. You okay? Harry whispered, noting his partner's tension. Odin gave a curt nod, pushing forward. They had barely made it past the first security checkpoint when alarms blared throughout the fortress. Shouts and the pounding of feet heralded the approach of Hydriank's warriors. "So much for stealth," Harry muttered, drawing his weapon. The corridor exploded into chaos as amphibious troops poured in from adjoining chambers. Odin and Harry fought back to back, their movements honed by months of partnership. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, leaving scorch marks on the metal walls. They battled their way through flooded compartments, each one testing Odin's tenacity. Water lapped at their knees, then their chests, forcing them to activate their rebreathers. "We're close to the command center," Harry called out, consulting the fortress schematics on his wrist computer. As they rounded the final corner, they came face to face with Drexel herself. The Hydriank's leader towered over them, encased in a monstrous exosuit dripping with weaponry. "Intruders!" she hissed, her voice distorted by her helmet speakers. "You dare challenge the collective?" With a gesture, Drexel activated hidden systems within the walls. Torrents of water burst forth, threatening to sweep Odin and Harry off their feet. Odin froze, his eyes wide with panic, as the deluge brought back memories of nearly drowning. Harry reacted instantly, pulling a small device from his belt. "Odin, hang on!" He activated the electromagnetic pulse, sending a wave of energy crackling through the chamber. Drexel's exosuit sparked and sputtered, its systems overloading. Shaking off his paralysis, Odin lunged forward. His claws found purchase in the gaps of Drexel's armor, tearing through vital components. With a final, desperate heave, he brought the Hydriank's leader crashing to the ground. As Drexel lay defeated, her helmet cracked open, revealing a face twisted with hate. "You're too late," she spat. "The charges are already in place. Soon the seas will rise and reshape this galaxy in our image." Harry's blood ran cold. "What charges? What are you talking about?" Drexel laughed, a sound devoid of mirth. "Thermonuclear devices, planted along key tectonic faults. When they detonate, the resulting tsunamis will drown entire continents." Alarms blared throughout the fortress, signaling its imminent collapse. Harry yanked Odin towards the nearest escape pod, his mind racing. "We have to warn the others," he shouted over the din of failing systems. "If those nukes go off—" Odin nodded grimly as they sealed themselves into the cramped pod. "It won't just be coastal worlds at risk. The entire planet will be reshaped." As their pod rocketed away from the sinking fortress, Harry opened a secure channel to their base. "Yarala, we've got a situation. Prep the team for immediate deployment. We're going to need every asset we've got." The pod's tiny viewport revealed the vast, roiling ocean stretching in every direction. Somewhere beneath those waters, Drexel's doomsday devices ticked ever closer to detonation. The newly forged alliance between humans and Tholians faced its greatest test, with the fate of countless worlds hanging in the balance. Odin's clawed hand found Harry's shoulder, squeezing gently. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Harry nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. The real battle was just beginning. The escape pod breached the surface, bobbing in the choppy waves. Harry and Odin wasted no time, immediately establishing a secure link with their headquarters. "Yarala, we need every asset mobilized," Harry said, his voice tight with urgency. "The Hydriank's collective has planted thermonuclear devices along major fault lines. If they detonate—" "Understood," Yarala interrupted, her holographic image flickering to life. "I'm dispatching our strike teams now. We've been tracking collective activity in the deepest parts of the ocean, sending coordinates to your pod's nav system." As the data streamed in, Odin's scales paled. "These are some of the most inhospitable environments on the planet," he muttered, studying the map. "The Mariana Trench, the Puerto Rico Trench." Harry glanced at his partner, noting the tension in his posture. "We'll find a way," he assured him. "We always do." Within hours, their makeshift fleet converged above the first target site. Specialized deep-sea pods were readied, their reinforced hulls designed to withstand crushing oceanic pressures. "We don't have time for stealth," Odin growled, strapping himself into the lead pod. We go in hard and fast. As they plunged into the inky depths, the comms crackled with reports of surface engagement. Yarala's ships clashed with the collective's armada, buying precious time for the strike team. The first two sites fell quickly to their assault. Odin's claws flew over the bomb's control panel, disarming it with practiced efficiency. But as they approached the final cache in the Challenger Deep, a barrage of enemy fire erupted from the darkness. Explosions rocked their formation. Through the pod's viewport, Harry watched in horror as Yarala's command ship listed, smoke billowing from a gaping hole in its hull. Before he could react, a sickening lurch signaled trouble in their own vessel. "Hull breach!" Odin shouted, frantically trying to seal the compromised section. "We're losing integrity!" The pod's systems flashed red, then went dark. With a hiss of escaping air, the hatch blew open. Harry reached for his partner, but Odin was already being swept into the abyss. "Odin!" Harry screamed, helpless as the alien vanished into the murky depths. Panic gripped him as he assessed their dire situation. Odin was out there alone, surrounded by his greatest fear, with a doomsday device counting down to detonation. There was only one option left. Harry sealed his emergency exosuit, praying it would hold against the crushing pressure. With a deep breath, he launched himself from the failing pod. The descent seemed endless. Pitch blackness enveloped him, broken only by occasional bioluminescent flashes. His suit's sensors picked up Odin's life signs, growing stronger as he neared the ocean floor. He found the alien curled into a fetal position, eyes wide and unseeing. The bomb's ominous countdown pulsed nearby, its crimson numbers reflected in Odin's glassy stare. "Odin, snap out of it!" Harry pleaded, shaking his partner. But Odin remained locked in his terrified trance, overwhelmed by the crushing weight of water and memory. Time was running out. Harry's gaze darted between the bomb and his catatonic friend. An agonizing realization settled over him like a shroud. With trembling hands, he began to disengage his suit's life support systems. As the last oxygen flowed into Odin's rebreather, Harry allowed himself a final moment of clarity. "I'm sorry, old friend," he whispered. "It's up to you now." Harry's vision blurred as he initiated the suit's final command. A surge of electricity arced through Odin's body, shocking him back to consciousness. As awareness flooded back, Odin found himself face to face with the nuclear device. Its countdown showed mere seconds remaining. Acting on pure instinct, his claws flew across its surface, inputting the disarm sequence within human speed. The timer froze with a single second to spare. Odin sagged with relief, turning to share the moment of triumph with Harry. But his partner was nowhere to be seen. A flash of movement caught his eye. Drifting away into the inky void was a familiar exosuit, its occupant motionless within. "No!" Odin breathed, the magnitude of Harry's sacrifice crashing over him like a tidal wave. As Allied ships began the recovery operation, Odin cradled the suit that held his friend's body. For the first time in his life, he embraced the ocean that had haunted him for so long, allowing its vastness to swallow his anguished roar. The ascent to the surface was a blur. Odin emerged from the depths a changed being, his fear replaced by a hollowness that echoed the abyss below. As medical teams swarmed around him, he remained fixated on Harry's suit, unable to let go. Yarala approached, her usually stoic demeanor softened by grief. "Odin," she said gently, "we need to debrief. The collective—" "Is finished," Odin interrupted, his voice raw. "But at what cost?" He turned away from the bustling activity on deck, his gaze drawn to the endless horizon. The ocean stretched before him, no longer a source of terror, but a vast, empty reminder of all he had lost and gained. In that moment, Odin knew his journey was nowhere near the end. The water that had claimed his friend now called to him, offering a path to redemption he never thought possible.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.